This is why understanding the difference between the conscious, unconscious, and subconscious mind is so helpful for healing because we can consciously understand something and we can consciously do all sorts of healing techniques, but that doesn't mean that there still aren't unconscious and subconscious resistance, blockages, contradictions happening that kind of holds us back from that area of growth and continues the pattern repeating over and over. So consciously, I recognize that the idea that is often put forth that we should not acknowledge negative emotions is not always correct. I consciously recognize that we need to be able to feel our emotions, acknowledge our emotions, work with our emotions, and like not force ourselves to be positive all the time. However, I just realized that I think I subconsciously knew, but my subconscious just wasn't like fully ready, or like my conscious mind wasn't fully ready to work with it. And that is kind of important to take into account as well, is like just because your subconscious is starting to tell you doesn't mean your conscious mind has space. So, like, I always try to give myself space to take time to learn and to open my mind up to growth. So, my subconscious had been starting to let me know that I had unconscious programming, that I had accepted the programming that it is never okay to acknowledge negative thoughts about myself. That I had accepted that acknowledging my insecurities, acknowledging my doubt, acknowledging my fears means that I am affirming it, right? This is a common talking point that I don't believe. Now, I do think there's a little bit of truth in it in the sense that if we are constantly telling ourselves that it is true that I am incapable, it is true that there is something wrong with me, then eventually we're going to start to actually believe it. But there's a difference between acknowledging that you have the feelings and allowing yourself to feel the feelings and consciously, and again, the difference between conscious and subconscious, because my conscious mind knows that there's nothing inherently wrong with me, that I am not broken, that it is okay to experience negative emotions. And my conscious mind has done a lot of work on, shame, undoing shame, and, self love and all this other stuff. My conscious mind has done all these different healing techniques for this very specific deep childhood wound that caused me to have deep insecurities, caused me to people please. My conscious mind has done all this work, right? And yet, what was happening to me was that, and this is something the subconscious does too. If we're not listening, the subconscious will begin to tell us about the thing that it's confused about and wants to work through and wants to be understood, wants to bring to light, right? And if we are refusing and further repressing, the harder we repress, the harder the subconscious will push it forward, right? So, what was happening to me was I was doing all these conscious healing techniques where I'm consciously journaling, I'm consciously doing positive affirmations, I'm consciously like doing meditative techniques and things of this nature, all these different methods. But my subconscious was like, hey, you need to acknowledge that you feel insecure. You need to acknowledge that you feel bad about yourself because of this thing. And when I look back, it's like my inner child was like, yeah, but I never got to feel this feeling. I have always felt insecure because of this. I have always felt bad about myself because of this. And I never was safe to be able to acknowledge that because I was a child. But now we're not a child, we're an adult. And I want to be able to express and feel these feelings. And I wasn't listening because I was like, well, I can't say negative things about myself. Like, I can't affirm negative things. I can't affirm my insecurities. And because of that, it just kept pushing. It just kept pushing. It actually made the shame based elements worse, that I wouldn't acknowledge how I felt, that I wouldn't acknowledge my insecurities. It made the shame so much worse, gut wrenching, right? And it got to the point where I felt like I was desperately trying to find ways to make the issue go away, and nothing was working, nothing was working, nothing was working. And I finally grabbed my journal, and it was this big like cathartic release moment where I'm crying and I'm like, you know what? I'm done lying. I'm done pretending. And I'm literally writing down all my insecurities. I'm like, I feel literally, I said, like, I feel this makes me feel worthless. This makes me feel da 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 da. And as I'm writing it, I'm like, the part of my mind that is the unconscious programming that we should not affirm negative feelings about ourselves was like, well, this is gonna mess me up in the long run, but I don't even care. It feels really good right now. And then some other part of my mind, like the subconscious and unconscious part of my mind, was like, thank God, finally, we're acknowledging it. Finally, we're admitting it. And as I'm writing these nasty things about myself, I'm like, I feel this way about myself. I feel that way about myself. I am feeling calm. I am feeling peace. I am feeling finally, we're acknowledging it. And it actually feels good. And then I start to acknowledge, yeah, it feels good for me to be saying this because it feels good for me to be acknowledging these insecurities that I've been repressing because lying about it, pretending, and this is why I have a little bit of a problem with a lot of the surface level conversations about positive affirmations because as a person who is trained in hypnotherapy, you cannot convince your mind of things that it doesn't see as believable, right? Like oftentimes in hypnotherapy, if you're working with something that is like a really deeply held wound or subconscious belief, they will tell you to kind of take steps. And that's kind of how I view this at this point is that my subconscious was trying to guide me to take a necessary step because there was a part of me that simply would not believe that, oh, I am not these things. I am this. I am that. There was a part of me that simply wasn't ready to believe that. It first wanted to acknowledge how I have felt for so long that I refused to acknowledge. So I journaled about it and it immediately felt a lot better. Over the course of the next week, I just basically told myself, at first I was like, okay, so I'm just going to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to be able to get past this. This is how it's going to be forever. I'm going to completely detach. Okay, because it feels good to completely detach from the idea of getting over the issue. And then I started to notice that what was happening was I was having a lot more space. I was disturbed by the issue a lot less. And what would happen is the feelings started coming in waves. So when the feelings of shame started coming up and the feelings of the insecurity started coming up, I started allowing myself to feel it as it came up and to literally feel those insecurities about myself and say, I feel X, Y, and Z about myself. This makes me feel blank about myself. And every time I do it, it feels good. It feels like finally we're acknowledging it. And it like changed something in my brain that afterwards, like saying the thing and acknowledging it feels good. And then afterwards, I feel space. I feel calm. I feel more energy. I feel like I'm not weighed down. And I do want to say that I think that the reason that this worked is because I have done a lot of work on undoing shame. And I don't think I was like my understanding and my intent was that consciously I understand that these things aren't true about myself. Consciously, I understand that these insecurities and these ways that I feel about myself are an illusion due to childhood trauma. But subconsciously and unconsciously, this is how I feel. And I'm going to acknowledge that I feel this way, even though I consciously know it's not true. And I think that's the element that made it so that it didn't feel bad. It didn't feel self abusive. It felt honest. It felt like I was lightening a load. And as I'm doing this, as these waves of emotion are coming, I'm crying. And when you cry, you release stress chemicals. And I believe, from an energetic and a spiritual perspective, that it is very likely that as I'm crying, as I'm feeling these emotions, I'm allowing these insecurities that are deeply held childhood wounds to release from me in an energetic way. And this certainly isn't going to work for anybody, but I want to make it clear that trying to force myself to positively affirm that I am not this, or like I am worthy, I am blah, 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 that type of stuff did not make me feel good. There was something intuitively in here, like here, that felt wrong, that felt bad about it. And when I finally acknowledged my negative feelings about myself, there was this thing in here that felt bad. It's like it like expanded and dissolved. It's like it literally transformed into a feeling of calm and a feeling of finally, a feeling of relief. That's what it was, a feeling of relief. And so this isn't going to be for everyone, obviously, but I just wanted to make this in case there are people who you believe either consciously or unconsciously in the power of positive affirmations, and you believe that you should never affirm negative feelings about yourself, and there's something inside of you that is like, this doesn't feel right. Because a lot of times they will tell you, oh, it doesn't feel right at first, but eventually it'll feel right. My take on that is it doesn't eventually feel right. You eventually lie to your unconscious mind enough that it just decides, I give up. I'm going to keep this down in the unconscious. And what do we know about the unconscious? The unconscious is like the silent operator of our vessel. It's affecting our behavior in ways we don't even realize. And like for me, this particular issue is the thing that happened to me was not directly related. You wouldn't consciously, like, I didn't consciously understand on a deep level how it was related to my own self abusive rhetoric and my own people pleasing behavior and my own self sacrificing nature. But affirming and acknowledging the way that I felt about myself created this space to where I could then see, oh, this is how I feel about myself. And this is why I am, my behavior, my unconscious behavior is showing in this way. And it's something that, again, like you can consciously understand, but it's different. The feeling of consciously understanding something and subconsciously understanding and embodying the thing is very different, right? Like the conscious understanding happens, it feels like energetically for me, it happens up here. The unconscious and subconscious understanding and like transforming and healing level feels like it happens at like a cellular level in your body where you're like, oh, the issue is fixed now. Like it feels like, oh, we've released the subconscious blockage. We now understand. We now embody. I think it's the thing that a lot of people call inner standing, where it's like inner standing versus understanding, where it's like conscious understanding happens in your head, but like subconscious and unconscious understanding happens in your whole body, where you're like, I have embodied this now. So if for some reason the positive affirmations don't feel good to you, do not gaslight yourself. There is a reason they don't feel good to you. And you don't have to acknowledge why they don't feel good to you until you will intuitively feel called and you will intuitively know when it's time to acknowledge your actual feelings. But I just wanted to make this for anyone who feels gaslit by positive affirmations.